Good afternoon, everyone. This is Henry, and as we get into tonight's video newsletter, recapping a signal that I've looked at in just about every one of these YouTube videos, simply because I enjoy carrying concepts forward, as opposed to bouncing around all kinds of different stuff. When a big theme shows up on the market, I think it's worth considering to follow that until it either comes to a head or something changes. So inside this VIX chart, there's a few things that I want to see or would like to point out to you that I think really stand out. The primary one that we've been on for weeks now is this daily squeeze. And if you look at it in the past, you'll just see how these squeezes tend to provide some really strong pops in implied volatility. And if you think that you can't run technical analysis on the VIX, I'd just like to show you a couple of these examples. Examples where I think we're looking at this in a very basic way. And even if we just look at the pop that the VIX saw yesterday, look at how it is symmetrical to the pop that occurred back in here. And part of why I enjoy measured moves or symmetry is simply because you're looking back at a product and saying, I think you could do this simply because you've done it before. You start to learn how markets like to move, and this is one way of looking at that. Look at how that swing low to this swing high, when measured from the 1527 low, showed you not exactly, but awfully close to where the VIX topped out. You think about how volatile that move up was, and then you think about how that 100% measure is sitting there at 2722. Well, that's giving you a way of thinking about this expansion of volatility. This is the way it expanded before, and then that was it. Well, then it's expanded in that exact same way once again, and now we have a much bigger question mark. And this is where I like to give you my way of thinking on the chart, but then also, if you never heard from me again, being able to follow it yourself and say, what's the big primary goal? Well, it's to see the squeeze, fire long, and take that up into, 32, 37. Anything that gets above the October high, I think would really help fulfill that signal. And I'm going to continue to look for that as long as the mean continues to rise. Okay, if we're going to compare this to this past signal, what do we need to watch for if bulls are going to take a bigger hold? To be clear, I think they've got their work cut out for them, but also what can we all kind of guess? And, we got to really focus on trading and zero politics. But what does it look like if this thing changes? And for whatever reason, the VIX is suddenly back down into the lower teens? Well, it's the resolution of the war situation. And again, I don't know enough to have an opinion on that, but I know what to tell you to watch. And again, and that's just to say this is kind of what's happened. And then look at the way that we go back to being bullish in equities. It is watching the pullback in the VIX to the mean. So as long as we're coming back to the mean and staying above it, I think the caution flags are still very much out there. If you see right through here, you see how that bar closes below the mean? Well, then you're back into a VIX contraction kind of situation, and the fear is no longer out there. So I think that's a very important comparison. I think that's a very important chart to watch. And I think that if the VIX does fire long, we are looking at SPX back down into 6,600. So again, more of just saying if this then that. We know when things have been so volatile and changing every day that we got to be flexible. But from a bigger picture perspective, I'm thinking that 6,600 is your good washout low. If that can happen as the VIX fires long, well, that's going to be some great opportunities to pick up some discounts into June and July. And then if anything changes, you guys know what I'll be watching for in that VIX signal. So that's the broad market recap. Again, I've really been enjoying bringing you that VIX chart. I hope you've enjoyed tacking it on to your technical analysis. And then another that I showed you in one of these videos, I believe the title of it was Sell Everything Except Amazon. And there were definitely some days in there where, of course, the index had some pretty big down moves. Amazon saw some of that yesterday, but today it really delivered. So what we've been working on this one is just a couple of calendars, which make it a little bit easier to hold. When Amazon does need to pull back some by being short that $220 call, but then you're buying a further out call. So as it makes this type of move, it will benefit and have more time premium than the shorter dated. And Again, I think that's a lot easier way to hold positions when you're down there at the lows like what you saw yesterday. From there, I've got to think that Amazon is working on a more important bottoming pattern. I'd like to think that those that bought under 200 are now in great shape. And if that is the case, what do we watch for? Well, today was day one of recovering the 21 EMA. Now you watch to see if the 21 EMA turns up as Amazon starts to gain more strength, or does it just go sideways as Amazon then consolidates in a range? That's part of what I do not know yet, but I know to tell you this was a buy back down in here. Again, that delivered for us today, and now we watch for the next setup while we continue to maintain that caution in the indexes. So as always, I appreciate your time and attention. If you're interested in more of this, I've got a lengthy video over on Simpler Trading where I'll be going over into all of the intricacies of what I am following right now, and I hope to see you there. Y'all have a great night. I'll talk to you again next week. Hey traders, this is Henry with SimplerTrading.com. I wanted to thank you for watching today's video. I hope you found it helpful, and if so, be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. If you would like to also see me putting these ideas into action and trading my own account live in front of you, be sure to sign up at SimplerTrading.com, and I hope to see you in the chat room sometime soon.